All right, guys, welcome to our very first episode of the Gen Pop Fitness Show. I'm your host, the Big Dog, of course. And today I'm joined by our very first guest. So he must feel pretty special, I reckon. Being the first bloke on the show. I'd like to introduce you guys to Reyne. Reyne, and he said this to me before, and I've got to get this correctly. I Googled you, mate, to get this all right. And I was really interesting with what I found. But Reyne essentially is an exercise and sports scientist, okay? Accredited exercise and sports scientist, specializing in rugby, but you've worked with a fair few codes and you work with Gen Pop people, and that's why you're on the show as well. I took some stuff off your page, which says your sort of specialty areas: musculoskeletal injury, rehab and prevention, sports specific development, movement analysis and corrective techniques. But I found you on Pinterest, apparently, YouTube, LinkedIn, Wix, Pinterest. Oh, I don't know if it was you, mate. I couldn't see the file, but it come up. It was the fourth search. So you're everywhere. Right. But I do appreciate you joining us on this show, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a nice little honor to get a message from you to invite me in. So a little bit chuffed, I must say. But,
mate,
but thank you for having me.
You've helped me out heaps of times. You've always been there for me when I've messaged you a question about a client or something. And so I've got a lot of respect for people that are doing the right thing, helping out. So that's why I wanted to get you on. But mate, tell us a little bit about your background, yourself, especially like obviously finishing uni. Where has the journey for you then gone over these past few years?
So I graduated from ACU, ended 2016, early 2017. Throughout my degree, I did a number of placements and prac. So I picked up a job with an allied health company straight out of graduation. So I was very, very fortunate with that. So I worked with them for about 2 years. And in that time, I had a lot of time being exposed to the allied health field, working alongside GPs, physiotherapists, EPs, personal trainers, massage therapists, naturopaths, everyone else in between as well. So I got to get a really good understanding of what the allied health landscape looks like and how people interact with it on a daily basis, and also how the integration comes as a part of how do each of those different professions work together collaboratively as well. In that time, I had fantastic opportunities to work with some sports teams, as well as people from all walks of life, in the general population, people coming back from serious surgeries, all kinds of sports injuries as well. Everyday people just looking to get healthier and fitter as well. So over the last couple of years, I've definitely got a lot of experience across the board in a lot of different aspects. Since then, I worked in a Good Life, as you know. So I have experience working in like the big box gyms and seeing how that operates quite differently, and to how some of the smaller boxes work. And then since then, I left that company, went out on my own, started a business called Kinetic Performance and Rehab, which is essentially my way of delivering my service to the people that I wanted to see and the people that I was really passionate with helping. Since then, so that was about 12 months I was running Kinetic, and then I had the opportunity to be invited into a ownership agreement with the guys at Adapt, that are based in Nunda, which is a small private gym that really is passionate about delivering high quality strength and conditioning programming to a group class environment with the general population. And that's been amazing so far. So I'm sure we'll get into some of the businessy stuff later on, but yeah, that's been a steep learning curve as well. So, and that brings us to today, I guess. That's a general overview.
It does. What's just quickly on that, because we obviously met each other through Go and Good Life as it was there. What's been like the biggest difference that you've seen from a big box gym to where you are now? Just out of curiosity.
Without pissing off a lot of people.
Go nuts, mate.
I think they're two completely different business models. The big box gyms obviously operate on a large scale where they're trying to get as many people through the door and onto their membership system as possible. And obviously they have trainers, coaches, other professionals in their network that also supplement their income as well through a rental model. But it lends them space to be able to run their own businesses individually. Compared to, say, a smaller box with Adapt where we are now, because we don't have thousands of people through the door each month, we have that opportunity to connect with our members in our community on a much deeper level, in a much more of a one-on-one context. To kind of put it simply, I guess, in a big gym environment, whether you're a member or you're an employee or a coach there, you are almost just another number. At the end of the day, you're just a number on a spreadsheet. Whereas in some of the smaller boxes, there's a lot more context around who you are and what you mean to that community, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think, the big box gyms, and there's nothing wrong with that. Their model is volume based, and people get lost, unfortunately, or, you're expendable as well. And, there's probably less room to hide in your own facility as well, from a coaching perspective. So, and I think the big thing that I look forward to from my business point of view is having that community where, even though we've built one in the gym that we're at the moment, it's going to be nothing compared to having your own facility, your own setup. You can do your own events. You don't have to worry about the politics and all the red tape. And so that's what I admire, is being able to have that community feel. And I mean, that's probably something you guys have built now at Adapt as well.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that really drew me to Adapt when I was looking for my own facility to run my own business to start off with was exactly that, was that community, was that sense of belonging. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a big box or in a smaller community. Anyway, you're going to have people from all different backgrounds, people from different age demographics, people with different goals in their health and fitness. But there is something about being a part of a smaller, more niche community where everyone, although can come from different age brackets or different exercise backgrounds or different training methods, there is like that unspoken vibe or that bit of friendship there, and that sense of belonging being in there. So that was a big thing for me. I know when I was looking for a new place to call home with my business, and that was something I definitely found at Adapt. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it ourselves here. So, we're not too far behind you. Mate, today, obviously this show, this is all about, I guess we're going to probably have two main people, right? It's a Gen Pop fitness show. The idea of this show was to take the complexity of, I guess, what unfortunately, and this saddens me, what the fitness industry has become, that we've got so much data and information out there. It's misinformed, it's misinterpreted. We've got, influencers just sharing stuff that straight up just doesn't make sense. And what I want to do is kind of break that down and get it out to the everyday Joe. And hopefully, hey, we get maybe some social athletes and stuff watching this too. And then obviously the second people, or the second population of people that hopefully should be watching this are your personal trainers. So first and foremost, where you're at, can you compare your service and your experience, your qualifications to that of a PT? What can the everyday person watching this get out of working with someone such as yourself that maybe they might not be able to get from a PT perspective?
Sure, definitely. I think I'm going to answer that question in a couple of different ways. The first part is to say that at the end of the day, the person that you're paying money to, whether it's a personal trainer, an exercise physiologist, an exercise scientist, or whatever kind of strength coach they want to call themselves, that doesn't necessarily matter. The most important thing at the end of the day is, are you getting the value for what you're paying? And also, are you getting the quality that you expect to come along with that? So to answer that in a different way, I think whether you're a personal trainer or an exercise scientist, it doesn't really matter. In my experience, I definitely think my having the university qualification for me has definitely opened some doors for me. And I have had several of my clients in the past mention, hey, look, I don't necessarily think I would have come to you if you're a personal trainer, or if you're just a personal trainer, or I think I would have chosen you over other people. But I think in terms of the service they provide, I don't think there's much difference, because a lot of that will come down to the individual themselves, the individual trainer themselves.
Right. Okay. Yep.
There's definitely, in a broader scheme, there's definitely a scope of practice that is available more so to exercise physiologists and those who've got the further university qualifications compared to, say, a personal trainer. And if that's what you want to get into, we can get into that as well. But in terms of the service, it's definitely going to come down to, what do you expect from your own training and what are you trying to get out of it? So, for example, working at a Go Good Life, yourself and myself both have worked in those kind of facilities. The types of people that we would see in that type of facility probably aren't that different. The type of people that you would as a personal trainer would see on a daily basis probably aren't that different than people I would see on a daily basis there. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
But it comes down to how then that professional would establish themselves in terms of their niche. So for myself, I really enjoy working with people on the injury, rehabilitation side of things. So I've established myself over the last couple of years as being more of an expert in that type of field. So for example, if you're a general population client or a person coming to the gym for the first time, and you know that, look, you want to get moving, you want to experience exercise, you want to be, improve your health somewhat, a personal trainer is going to do that very, very well for you. Granted that they're educated enough and they know what they're talking about, yes, you should be fine. If you are someone that has a history of any kind of, musculoskeletal injuries, any kind of respiratory problems or, heart problems and stuff like that as well, you're probably going to need advice from someone who is much more qualified and that has experience in that realm and dealing with cases of that nature rather than just a personal trainer, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Agreed. Can you touch on things like there? Let's not go too far in the scope of practice, but what about one thing that I've seen a lot is, say, recovering cancer patients coming back to the gym, and I'm seeing a lot of personal trainers handling cancer patients. What about complications during pregnancy? For the most part, if there's no complications, we're okay. But what have you potentially seen there? And can you maybe touch on that for any personal trainers watching this, or maybe any Gen Pop people watching this that are recovering from such diseases such as cancer? Is that something that they should be going to see you for?
For me personally, as an exercise scientist, no. I would recommend seeing an exercise physiologist or even perhaps a physiotherapist that specializes in that area that you're after. So, postnatal, for example, it's almost a minefield of complications. There are a lot of things that can go wrong before and after pregnancy, and there are a lot of extra considerations that need to be taken into account. Most of the time, and I've dealt with postpartum patients myself, but most of the time things will go right if you adhere to most of the normal guidelines that are in place. But for the 10 or 20% of the time when things do go wrong or things don't go according to plan, you need the expertise, or you at least need the referral network to be able to send your patient or your client onto someone who actually really does know what they're talking about. In terms of scope of practice, your fitness trainers, their insurance companies will cover a range of whatever they're qualified to do. And obviously, complications with, pregnancy, with cancer, and things like that as well. Certain insurance will only provide cover for certain things like that because it is out of scope of practice for many different trainers out there. Now, at the end of the day, someone who is exercising and moving well is probably going to be doing more positive things for their health than negative things. But as I said earlier, it's probably more about when that 1% of times when things do go wrong, you need to know how to handle it. And people who are suitably qualified in those fields and specialize and spend many, many years of researching in those fields will know how to do that. So myself, for example, as someone who works with injuries and injury rehab, bones heal, muscles heal, everything heals. That's the way that physiology works, obviously with correct guidance. But because I've spent the last couple of years really focusing on and learning and refining my craft in that area, a personal trainer may be able to do a shoulder reconstruction rehab. But what happens when, they're still getting pain 6 months down the track, or they haven't got their full range of motion back, or, they are a larger chance or higher risk of re-injuring themselves. That's where someone like myself or someone else is suitably qualified has the experience to go, okay, well, these are our markers of where we are now. This is where we need to be, and this is how we can plan to get to there.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and if we touch on the insurance companies, I know the minefield that I have to go through with my insurance alone already, and it's a nightmare. And insurance companies, I basically look at something and say, let's minimize any risk possible. The problem in the fitness industry, I guess in any medical industry, is one bad mistake could ruin you. And it's just not worth it because there's enough out there for everybody to train for. There's enough clientele for personal trainers to just stick in their scope of practice. And I've obviously spent years as well. As you said, I've been lucky to work around people such as yourself and doctors and physios, and it never goes right at the same time. It's never the same thing. And it's just, what if the shoulder is still painful? What are these things that you miss? And it's outside of our scope as trainers to deal with. And that's why I think it's really important that trainers, I'd love to see more of this, is forming those allied health connections and networks. Hey, you've got this problem. I just refer people straight to the physio that I know. How many times have I reached out to you saying, hey, I'm this person, such and such, where do I go from here? And you're always like, yep, definitely refer on. Why do you think, though, personal trainers aren't doing that? Why are we not referring on?
I think there's probably two main aspects to that. One is the insecurity of
Yeah.
finding clients itself. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is the fact that, hey, I've spent money on Facebook ads, or I've been, busting my gut in the gym, out on the floor space to try and meet people. And I've tried to work really, really hard to try and get all these people into my business. And the first thing, or a weekend, they go, oh, my shoulder really hurts, my back really hurts. And you go, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the financial incentive. Obviously, you don't want to be
Yep.
missing out on that money that's coming in from that client. These people are paying you for a service. You want to make sure you can continue to give them that service.
Yep.
Unfortunately, though, that's that greedy aspect of it, right? It's that greed of going, hey, no, I reckon I can handle this. I reckon I've got a strong hold on what's going on here. But at the end of the day, you probably don't. And I think that's the reason why people don't refer, is because they are insecure enough about perhaps their service, or they don't want to be missing out on that dollar value that comes in each week.
Yep.
But in reality, I think what a lot of trainers miss out, and I think you and I have had this conversation before, is that building those referral relationships with allied health professionals can actually be more beneficial for your business than anything else, in terms of the value that you provide to your clients and your network. But also, at the end of the day, it does provide more cash flow into your business as well, if you set up the right way.
Oh, it's absolutely huge. Like, remember when Inspire first come into go, and the amount of trainers that thought that they would take everything because how can I compete with a university graduate? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, a lot of the times, like I would suspect, like, well, I know from my personal self, probably like 90% of all clients have always come back. The ones that didn't were the ones that needed that extra special attention. So I lost maybe 10%. It's not a huge amount. And I couldn't give them the best value for their money anyway. It was outside of what I could deliver. But the majority of them, when we're talking aches and pains, you go and get that fixed, you come back, and it might just be a couple of weeks, sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe they need to do some rehab specific stuff. But you also, as we said, if you set this up well, the amount of referrals that I get from allied health
Definitely.
professionals
Yeah.
well and truly covers any potential loss. And I think you're right. I agree with you. I think it's a bit of a ego arrogance thing, that where people are like, if I send them off, I'm losing them. But when you can say to someone, you know what, look, there's something not right going on here. Let's go and get this checked. And then 6 weeks later, they're 100%. They're going to value you. And I think actually that's going to improve
Definitely. Yeah.
client retention, right? Like, you're going to have that client a lot longer, because every time they've got something wrong, they know that you're not just taking their money or taking them for a ride. And so I think that's a huge thing
Definitely.
that I'd love to see more of in the fitness industry.
Definitely. And I think at times, like, I know in my career very early on, I was very similar. I was very conscious of the money that I was bringing into my business.
Yeah,
And I
of
knew
course.
that, I think we've all done that at some stage.
Absolutely.
But there is something to be said for, hypothetical, but if a person's got aches and pains or does need to go and be referred on to someone else, instead of keeping them, I think you'll earn their respect as a professional much more if you say, hey, look, you know what? This is a little bit beyond my scope of practice, or a bit beyond my understanding what's going on, but I do know the right person that can help you. I think that breeds much more tremendous respect and also trust in that client's professional relationship there. So as you said, when they come back on board after 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is, might be a couple of sessions, you just kind of continue on, and that client will have a much more profound respect for you as a professional at the end of the day, because you did the right thing by them, not right by you, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I don't know who I heard this from, but it stuck with me for so long as a coach. And they basically said, if a client asks you an answer and you don't know, and you give them some half answer, if you don't think that one day they're going to find the right answer, then you're kidding yourself, and it's going to make you look really untrustworthy and foolish. It's better to say, you know what, I don't know, and then refer on.
Definitely.
I don't know, but I do know who you need to go and speak to. So I think that's something we can work on in the fitness industry.
Definitely, man.
What are the biggest problems then that you're seeing yourself at the moment in, let's say, the fitness industry, and talking and training with just everyday people that are watching this right now? What problems are we seeing potentially from a coaching perspective, maybe from an influencer perspective on social media? What are some of the problems that get under your skin at the moment?
Definitely. I think there's such a disparity between what a good coach is and what your average coach is.
Yeah,
And I
nice.
think in the bigger box gyms, we get to kind of see the range of where those trainers fall into that continuum, I guess.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the industry itself is set up where the people gaining their qualifications are being spat out and churned out at such a rate. It's almost it's unsustainable for the health of the industry.
Yep.
And we might get into it another point later on, but I think with current times, with what's happening with the economy right now, and the state of the world with COVID-19 and stuff, is actually really sorting out those who will survive in the industry and those people who unfortunately don't have the guts and the determination to make it through. But we can get to that later if you need to. But the disparity between the good coach and the average coach is, and a lot of what makes a good coach what they are comes down to how much time they are investing into their own education, whether that's, extra courses that they're doing, whether it's a university degree, whether it's just, spending time learning from other good coaches in this industry. We often lend our time to, PT students and university students to come in and say, hey, look, I want to be a bit better than what I am right now, or how do I get to where you guys are? And we are more than happy to be able to mentor those people and give them our time and our knowledge and be able to teach them and help them along their journey a little bit. But people who don't invest time themselves, they're not worth investing money into at the end of the day, right? So I often get asked, if you could do your time again, whether it be a PT certificate or a university, what would I do again? And it's a really hard question to answer, but I think honestly, instead of me spending 30, 40 grand at university, I'd rather go back and do my PT certificate and then spend the rest of that 3 or 4 years learning from coaches, quality coaches, and improving my own value that I can add as a trainer and a coach in the industry. As I said earlier, it doesn't really matter what you call yourself at the end of the day. It comes down to what you can offer as a coach to someone and the quality of that service. And so within that, I think there's a lot of, as I said, disparity between what's good coach and average coach. Then you've got these Instagram influencers and stuff as well in between. Like they come in out of nowhere with no qualifications, no experience. It's very much that, oh, this worked for me, it must work for you type attitude. And unfortunately, that's what gets people hurt at the end of the day. So if I was a Gen Pop client coming in, the first thing you got to do is your research. The first thing you got to do is look into the industry and look around and see what types of service are offered there, what types of trainers there are. Look into their experience, what kind of results they've had with their previous people. I know in terms of sales and stuff, social proof is one of the most important things that you can do to prove yourself as a professional. I know you've harped on about that before, and you've got a lot of knowledge in that area. But being able to show, hey, people in similar positions to you, whether it's weight loss or trying to put on muscle or whatever, I've done this many times before, right? Yep. That social proof is a really important thing. So as a person coming into looking for some coaching, you've got to be able to do your research.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll leave it on that. We'll come back to that in a minute anyway, if you want.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah. I think I agree. Can we define, how do we define, you've said social media, touch on that, you've done qualifications. I don't think people do enough research, right? So when you walk in, the one thing that I always love is you walk into any medical professional, right? And they've got all their degrees on the wall, and you can Google them and away you go. And we're probably not doing that as, let's say, consumers buying fitness. We kind of just see this and go,
I agree.
All right, let's do it. And obviously in the big box gyms can't have these plastered walls because they've got a shared office. But probably for everyone watching this, that's just an everyday person, ask for the qualifications. What experience do you have? Can you show me some social proof? What have you worked with? What insurance and registrations do you have? And I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm quite happy to then turn around and go, well, here you go. Because as you said, same as in sales or business, whatever, probably I think the PT industry is missing the mark where we're doing that research. We all know, we can go and find a really good surgeon in a particular field, and they've got all of their stuff on their walls. You can find them on any medical site, but PTs, it's just very out there. 100%. So I think if you're someone watching this looking for any particular coach, the key is to do your research, just as if you're looking for a business coach or anything like that, is, ask for these qualifications, ask for social proof, and don't be afraid to then, I've got no problems with someone actually kind of going through 2 or 3 different coaches and having consults with them to figure out then who's going to be the right fit for them. So, and going back to the qualifications part, this is something that really bugs me, is that people get their PT certificate, and that's the last ever little bit of upskilling they ever do.
100%.
That blows my mind. Because you guys have to do your CEC, it's not called CECs, but you have to do
all your credit points and stuff.
Your credit points, right? Every 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, correct. So you got to accrue a certain number of points according to your qualification and stuff like that each year.
Yep.
And the reason behind that is the health and fitness industry, or especially health, is continuously evolving. Every single year, there's new evidence that comes out around certain concepts with health. There's new training methods that are being, put forth as being, okay, this is the better way that we do things.
Yep.
As research and science evolves, we as professionals in this industry, who are for the majority of the time the forefront of it, or where the general population has that first interaction with the health industry, for a lot of people, we need to be up to date. And so holding ourselves accountable as professionals, we need to make sure that we're also keeping our knowledge up to date as well. And that's the most important thing. As you said, there are a lot of people who kind of go, yep, sweet, got my certification, I'm good to go. And unfortunately, those are the people that do get left behind in some instances as well. Just to come back to your point before about, like, how do we select a coach?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I think this is really unique to the fitness industry, is that a lot of people decide on who they should be coached by based on what they look like. That's calling a spade, and that's pretty bland, right? So, especially in the bigger box gyms, you walk in, you go, all right, the guy with the biggest muscles, or the girl with the best legs or whatever. All right, cool. I want to look like her, and that's how people select their coach.
Yep.
Not saying that those particular people aren't very knowledgeable what they do, because obviously what they're doing for them is working for them. Coming back to what I said earlier, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for other people. Just because someone is very good at what they do for themselves doesn't mean they're good at coaching other people to do. The quality of coaching can be very, very different.
Yeah.
And so one thing I would say to people is that when you're doing your research, don't go off face value. Look into the experience, look into the people that they've helped, look into what their qualifications are. Don't just look at how good they look. Because let's be honest, half the time, those people cheat anyway. Just saying. Just saying.
We can go there. You know me. I don't care. I'll just tear anything apart. I don't mind. I think the last thing I want to say on that is, I know I got no problem saying things like this. Is Fitness Australia have it in their registration that people need to get these points. The problem is they're not monitoring it. Plain and simple. There's no follow-up process from that. And that's why a lot of people have an issue with that as a governing body. I think they need to take some responsibility. And look, RTO training systems, we said that before. The pathway to become a PT, like the jokes about pulling it out of a Wheaties box or something, it's poor. We need to manage it better, because we know as well, we've seen massive increases in lawsuits in fitness.
Definitely.
And this is going to get worse. And so that's something that I think the RTOs and I think Fitness Australia really need to start to take this seriously.
100%, man. Like, I think it was only just recently I heard about a case down in New South Wales, I think it was, where a lady was trying to sue her personal trainer for something like $300,000 because she hurt her back doing a deadlift.
Yeah,
and
I know this
one. I was like, wow, and look, not that I don't think she's not within her right to do that.
Yep.
But I think people are consciously becoming more aware of what their rights are in terms of that. And I think people are also becoming more willing to exercise those rights as well. And so as a professionals industry, you need to make sure you're protecting yourself.
Absolutely.
But the best way to do that is by investing time in your own learning, so you don't get to that stage, if that makes sense. It's not about having the best insurance policy at the end of the day. It's making sure you're doing all these steps up until that point to make sure you're covering yourself. And the best way to do that is to become a better coach.
100%. So that leads us into this great question, because I was going to ask about this. What are these injuries that you see often with just Gen Pop people in the gym, whether it's with a PT or just in general? Like, we're not picking on trainers. Yep. We don't want to go there. We've done that enough today. But what are some of these common injuries that we're seeing that you see?
Yeah, the three most common ones that I see would be lower backs, shoulders, and probably knees is the third most common one.
Yep.
And there's obviously a variety of reasons as to why we would see those particular type of three, but I think probably the most common reason for any kind of injury that we would see is poor movement or poor coaching of the movement, right? So whether they're with a PT or not, we have to consider what causes those things. At the end of the day, there may be a very easy explanation for it. Like, are they a desk worker? Are they a tradie? Are they people that spend a lot of time overusing these joints or underusing them?
Yep.
And so that thing causes a problem later on.
Yep.
Or is there more of a pathological reason as to why this is happening? Now, that side of things is out of all of our scope of practice, which is why we need to be able to refer on.
Yep.
Because that's not something that we can touch, right?
There you go.
But for the three most, like the shoulders, lower backs and knees, a lot of those are issues that can be actually quite easily fixed if they are some of these more common, causes, right?
Yes,
so
of course.
A lot of the a lot of lower backs that we see tend to come from people who are either underusing their muscles around their hips and their lower back, or they're overusing them. So take like an office worker versus a tradie, for example, right? So an office worker is someone who sits a lot of the time during the day, they're not moving. They're not using all their muscles where they should be. So a lot of these muscles get very tight, very weak, and they're very underused. So when we go and then try and use them in a gym, or we try and use them to do exercise or running, whatever it is, they don't perform as well. And they get a lot more stress through those muscles and those tissues than they are used to, because we're unprepared for that.
Yes.
On the other side of things, you've got, like a tradie who might be bending over, shoveling dirt all day, gets a lot of strain through their lower back. When it comes time to exercise, those muscles are already overworked, and they're not necessarily moving in the right capacity or in the right plane of motion. So you're asking for a bit of a recipe of disaster there. So in terms of how we address that, I think there's a couple of things we need to consider. The first thing that I try and teach my clientele is movement is the most important thing, right? So how well do they move? Are they moving properly? Are they moving with the right intent? Are they able to feel, certain exercises working in the right areas? Are they feeling in the wrong areas? I think the movement is the most important thing, and having awareness around how your own body functions and how your own body feels in certain situations and in certain exercises is the key to anything else after that. So the next part would be then obviously strengthening those muscles, right? Strengthening those muscles and those tissues, those tendons, everything, so that, as we get stronger, our bodies can deal with that load appropriately. We can deal with that progression. Gradual progression, or progressive overload is technically the term for it. Allowing our bodies to be exposed to these heavier weights over time is really key. Because if we try and jump the gun and go from doing absolutely nothing to going, shit, I'm going to add 100 kilos to my back squat, body's going to crumble. Something's going to go wrong. Something's going to go ping, and you're not going to know what to do.
Absolutely.
So progressive overload is very, very key there as well.
Yeah.
But I think I wrote down a few notes here. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, you got to consider both ends of the spectrum. Is it something that's being underused or something that's being overused?
Absolutely.
Is your exercise program, is that sufficient enough to be addressing those concerns? If it's not, you need to be able to seek advice for it, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll leave it on that. What else do you want to go with that?
Well, yeah. We don't, do trainers, well, I know the answer is yes, but a lot of these, I call them body insurance movements. That's what we used to call it, the AFL, right? We would do body insurance movements to build resilience in the body and to protect them from the efforts that they're going to experience on the weekends. But we're not doing that in the gyms with trainers. We're not doing proper warm-ups and activations. And I'm a big fan of activations. I think, it's priming the body right for the movement and for that what's going to happen. So I'm thinking movement first. And I know a lot of people aren't doing that. So where do trainers go? Trainers watching this, where do trainers go? First question to how do they start to incorporate this, where they get the information from this just to help build resilient bodies? And then for the Gen Pop people watching this, where do they go?
Okay, good question, man. So I think for the trainers, first of all, I think a lot of that should come in their own learning and education. Okay. And if they don't know how to do these things, seek help from someone else. Like Jace yourself, you do a lot of education for your trainers. Yep. Someone like yourself who is passionate about helping other people about how to learn these things and incorporate these things in their programming, that should be their first step. Yep. Whether it's in a course that you have to pay for, or even it's just off a reluctant to say off a YouTube video, but you've got to be able to source some information from somewhere. Okay.
There's some good ones. There's good YouTube channels.
100%. There's definitely some good ones out there.
Yeah.
I think some of the programs are offered through ASCO and stuff like that that are really about set basis of programming structures and things like that can be very, very helpful. But it comes down to the basics of, how do you prepare someone for movement? What's the point of a warm up? Why do we do it? And using that understanding should be able to apply into why we need to do these things. So to answer your question, seek out someone like yourself who, is able to educate other trainers on how to do this.
Yep.
Search for some sources online, whether that's through a course or through some free content available on the web, but it's got to be obviously of a high quality and that's accurate.
Of course.
For those in the general population, if you're not willing to, invest time and invest money in an expert in the field, like a trainer, then you need to be able to educate yourself. But that can also be very dangerous because, as we said before, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. So it's you've got to do your own research. You've got to be able to collate a lot of information and put it into what makes sense for you.
Yep.
But a couple of basics: start with some kind of mobility work. If you're someone that's been sitting at a desk all day before you go and exercise, you got to mobilize yourself. Got to get yourself moving. Whether it's stretching, foam rolling, some basic lightweight exercises. What have you got to do? It's got to be there. Some kind of muscle priming exercise, as you said before. So before we use any of the muscles that we want to load heavy, we need to make sure that they're switched on, ready to go. There's enough blood flow to that muscle to sustain the activity that we're about to do. So you need to be able to prime those muscles with an exercise as well. And then take an exercise like squats, for example. If you're warming up the squats, start light, work your way into the movement. Don't go straight to a 100-kilo squat because you'll hurt yourself. Your body's got to have time to adjust and adapt and prime itself. Your body's a very complicated and very complex system. And most of the time it will take care of itself, right?
Yes.
But as long as we give itself these little reminders and these little cues along the way, you'll be fine.
Should people be then mobilizing and let's say activating every session? Do they need to do it 2-3 times a week? Like for something, let's say they do have something that's persistent there from their lifestyle or whatever. Is that something they need to do every day?
It's a very yes and no answer, Jason. It's obviously depending on the person. Look, like you're probably the same as me. Every trainer would be the same. We've all had our own issues. We've all had our own little injuries and stuff to pop up. So if I was to sit here and say every single person should stretch and mobilize every single day, I'd be a bit of a hypocrite because I don't do it myself.
Yes.
So that being said, if you are someone that knows you have issues, if you have a trouble spot or pathology that needs that attention, then you probably should be giving it more attention than anything else, right? Whether that's on a daily basis or twice a daily basis, or maybe it's just a couple of times a week, whatever guidance is given to you from your health professional is the guidance that I would follow. Again, depends on the pathology, depends on the actual injury or whatever the thing is itself, right? So it's a bit of how long's a piece of string? Like it's a hard question to answer.
I just like throwing you under the bus, see what you can come up with. Can you overdo it? Is there like a risk for doing any mob work, activation work? Is there any detriment there potentially?
In terms of like, can you stretch too much? Is that what you kind of mean? Or?
Can you stretch too much? Can you, okay, let's take trigger pointing for an example, right? Sure. Some people get on kettlebells and smash the hell out of them. Other people can't stand that. I want to see your take on that. Like, can we actually overdo that where we end up potentially doing, what I would refer to as a potential like stress response? Is that a thing?
Gotcha. Look, in my experience, I've never seen anyone overdo it.
Okay.
That being said, I've never had someone who goes, you know what, I'm going to do this for 50 minutes every single day, twice a day. I've never had anyone do that. So I can't tell you what that looks like from my own experience. Okay. I would say though, if you are someone that has to spend upwards of maybe 10 to 15 minutes doing this kind of mobility work, you're probably missing another essential component that could be more beneficial, or there's another avenue that you could explore that could be more beneficial, right?
Yep.
You're someone who's really struggling with ankle mobility. If your dorsiflexion is just shit house and it just doesn't work, you can be doing all the calf rolling that you want, but in the day, if you don't squat and expose your body into those deeper ankle flexion positions, you're not really going to be using, or you're not going to be improving yourself over time, right?
Correct.
So I think, can you overdo it? Possibly, I don't know. But if you can overstretch, maybe, I don't know. Ask a yoga instructor. They do tons of that shit on a daily basis, right?
It'd be interesting. I don't have the answer. I don't know. That's why I was like, I have to suss that out.
So I don't know. It can go one or two ways, man. I think is there potential to overdo it? Possibly, but I think it's all relative to their own goals as well. If your goal is to become more flexible, all right, take up yoga.
Absolutely.
If your goal is to get into better position so you can squat better, a little bit of mobility goes a long way, but also practicing squatting properly goes a long way as well. There's a lot of different aspects to that.
100%. Okay, so now we're dealing. We've got that. We know we need to mobilize. We're talking about pain.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing that I hear all the time from personal trainers. So I want to talk about pain because I want to try to identify that for trainers watching. But I want people who are experiencing pain every day. It blows my mind that a lot of people have just come to live with that. Every consult I have,
Definitely.
people will be like, I've got lower back pain, I've got this, but it's always like I've had it for years, whatever. So I'll break it down in a couple of questions because I'll ask you too much, then we can break it up. Pain. What pain should people, for trainers and clients, be looking out for where, okay, you know what? That's not just the whole no pain, no gain thing. There's something potentially wrong here. Can we identify that?
Yeah. It's complicated because as personal trainers, we're not taught to diagnose pain. We can't diagnose a pain. Yes. But that being said, if something seems unusual, it's probably because it usually is, right?
Yes.
And there's obvious pain that is related to exercise, right? The burning sensation we get when we're doing high repetition volume exercises or
Yep.
the DOMs that we get the day or two after exercise. Those are normal pains that we normally experience,
Yes.
right? If someone's been working their lower back because they've been doing certain exercises there, that back, you're probably going to be a little bit tender there the next day as
Yeah.
part of the muscle recovery process. It's a response that your body gives you to tell you, hey, look, we've done some work here. We're currently working on recovering from that. That's okay.
Yep.
That's normal. And that's within reason. So
Yep.
unusual pain is when you as a trainer would expect someone to be able to do an exercise or a movement pain-free.
Yep.
But that's not the case. They are getting pain in some kind of movement or a particular spot.
Right.
And you can break that down to a few different avenues. The first should be, okay, I think squats and deadlifts are probably the two most common ones that we would see.
Yeah.
Deadlifts probably more so than anything else. Deadlifts are not an exercise that you should feel back pain with, right?
Yes.
There should be an exercise where the lower back is one of the groups of muscles that is worked during a deadlift, but it should not be the primary, pain center or sensation that we feel when we're doing a deadlift, right?
Correct.
And that comes down to communication with your client. So as a trainer, a lot of the questions I'm asking, okay, whereabouts are you feeling this movement? Okay. And giving them buzzwords, okay, are you feeling your glutes activate? Are you feeling your hammies working? Are we bracing properly? And allowing them to find those things for themselves. A lot of people will, if they're very new to an exercise, will resort to what is the path of least resistance. And so in a deadlift, the lower back is the hinge point for that movement. And if they're not taught properly how to brace and how to engage the right muscles to initiate that movement, they're going to go the path of least resistance, which is to hinge to their lower back, which does cause a lot of issues, obviously, right?
Yes.
So to answer that, I think a lot of it has to be with the communication with your client. Okay, where are you feeling this exercise? Not say, do you have pain with this exercise, but using where you're feeling this as a guideline can give you a bit of an idea of where to go from there, right?
Yep.
In terms of when it's not okay or when the pain is something that should not be, referred to us. Anything that's unusual, anything that you can't explain. And I'm not talking about explain as in like, can we take a stab? Oh, it might be this. It should never be about that.
No.
It should be a, hey, you were feeling this pain in your shoulder because you aren't actually setting your scapula properly.
Yep.
If they set the scap and that fixes the pain, sweet, you're awesome. You know exactly what it is.
Correct.
But if you're getting this persistent pain and you've tried as a trainer to correct them and they're still getting pain, okay, there's probably going to need a second opinion of someone who's a bit more suitably qualified in that area.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that what I see, or I hear conversations all the time, as you know, is it's for me as well. It's pain that is is still lingering outside of a session. Like people coming saying, waking up like with numbness and tingling, right, or my elbow sore, things like this. A lot of these things, or for me, joint pain. When people start talking about joint pain, that's like a flag for me. I'm like, okay, when you're coming in, you're like, man, my elbow, every time I do this stuff, or my shoulder, I'm like, you probably need to go and see someone, because like it could be something so minor that you can fix, but a lot of these things potentially could turn into, something more damaging, and maybe not now, but 10, 15, 20 years later. And to be honest, especially if you're under a heavy squat or a deadlift or a bench, and that joint finally gives way, then you're going to be in a hell of a lot of problems, a lot of pain. So I think I'm hearing sometimes, in the gyms and fitness where people are kind of like, oh, it's just, I love the thing I hear is we're like, oh, I probably just strained it a little bit the other day. And I'm like, well, it's been going on. Like I have a 3-day pain rule. Like that's just a thing that I've learned a lot from around the AFL doctors, physios work there. They're like, you know what? If things are still uncomfortable after 3 days, that's probably not normal. I don't know if you agree with that. Like, I just think it's a bit of an easy rule, right? Like to sort of think of.
I definitely agree with that. 3 days is normal for most of in terms of recovery from certain exercise sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That being said, you can also, I've seen both ends of the spectrum where we have, pain, like musculoskeletal issues that don't present any symptoms at all.
Yeah. Right.
But we also see, pain that also lingers for up to 7 days as well. That has actually nothing to do with anything sinister at all.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, mate. Every time I train my hamstrings, I get sore for like a week. It doesn't mean I have a hamstring problem.
Yeah, correct.
But that of course would be some programming and stuff anyway.
Yes.
But definitely like the lingering stuff you're talking about. That's like, if I'm waking up with pins and needles and stuff like that, that isn't normal.
It's definitely
not. I think if in doubt, you need to refer on, right? If you have that little party brain goes, I wonder if this is normal. I wonder if other people live with this. Probably isn't. Yeah. And to be fair, if you go to a physiotherapist or a GP and they say, you know what, that's pretty normal, you're fine, then at least you know that's okay. But I
Oh,
think that if
absolutely.
in doubt, refer out rule is probably the one that we need to go to there. If you're unsure about something, if you go, oh man, I've got this really crappy knee the last 10 years, and every time I go running, every time I go up a set of stairs, it really aches like a whole day after.
Yeah.
Probably need to get that checked out, man. That's not normal.
Yeah. Yeah. People just start to live with these things. It blows my mind. Like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. It's just, I think people just become like, it's part of life, whatever. Like, which is sad because my thing has always been like, again, as long as there's nothing deep inside, like a pathological type reason, I believe a lot of people can become pain free for a lot of the generic stuff and a lot of lifestyle
100%.
based stuff. And I'm like, why would you not want to be pain free? And a lot of this stuff can be done, again, like this is just general advice, but a lot of that can be done, relatively easy with guided experience from someone such as yourself, maybe some physio sessions. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that, for the majority of cases needs like drastic surgery or potential long term. And I was like, but I think we just need to sometimes go and seek that help. And just quickly, the last question I want to ask you, Pain, is GP versus physio, right? So many people
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, I went to the local doctor and the doctor says, you probably just strained your back, throw some deep heat on it, or, there's like,
Yeah.
that blows my mind. So for me personally, I've always just said this: if you're sick, go to a doctor. If you have pain, please go to a physio. I know they cost money, but
Mm-hmm.
good physios that I've always sent my clients to and whatever else, unless they've had something really drastic, they've had to do a couple of quick sessions, do their homework, work with me, and they're okay. Like they might spend
Definitely.
$200, and if they've got private health, it's nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good rule that you came up with there. So yeah, if you're sick, go to a GP, definitely.
Yeah,
If you're in pain, obviously depending on where that pain is, if it's a muscle or a joint that's in pain, you definitely need to seek advice from a physiotherapist. They're the gold standard approach to any kind of musculoskeletal injuries or conditions. I think that should be your first point of call.
yep,
Um, that being said, like I have had people, I've had patients and clients and friends and family who go, hey, I've got this really sore back or really sore shoulder. I'm going to go to the GP and see what kind of medication they can give me. And
yep,
unfortunately, I think the not that the GP industry, but people in that profession are obviously always looking for the best quick fix that they can,
yep,
on both from the patient and also the practitioner point of view.
yes,
Um, but often those popping pain pills for a sore back or for a sore shoulder will only get you so far. It's just a
yep,
band-aid, right? It's just a
absolutely,
band-aid for the pain. It doesn't actually cure the problem. It doesn't fix the problem. It's just dulling down your pain receptors, right? That's all it is.
absolutely, yeah,
So in order to get long-term
yep,
lasting results or long-term change, you need to be able to seek the advice of either a physiotherapist, an exercise physiologist, or someone who's suitably qualified to be able to help give you the right structure and how to progress through that. Okay, so
yep,
backs, shoulders, knees, whatever it is, your GP might be your first point of call for some people to get a referral to
of
a
course,
physiotherapist, because that's also available.
yes,
But then a physiotherapist will be the person that essentially guides you in which direction to go. Yeah. So as you said
yep,
with your clients before, there might be a couple of sessions with them and then some homework program and then some sessions with you as well. It doesn't
yep,
necessarily mean that a lot of people have to stop training. If anything, it means
correct,
that people need to start training more in a
yeah,
lot of different aspects, right?
yes, it's a good one,
Because I think this is something I think we'll come back to a few times, but the human body itself is meant to move. The human body isn't
absolutely,
meant to be in pain all the time. It's not. The human body is so complex and it has a lot of self-healing properties to it, but it's also incredibly resilient, incredibly strong, and it's
yes,
capable of a lot more, right? But unfortunately, I think as people, as humans have evolved over the
yep,
last probably 200 years more so than anything else, but
yep,
in terms of long-term evolution, probably getting a bit off traffic, sorry, mate.
no, no,
But
go
like in terms
nuts,
in terms of how we've evolved, we've chosen the easier path of things. So sitting down at a desk all day,
absolutely,
so we can stare at a computer screen and stuff. Things like that. We've chosen the path of least resistance as we've evolved, and unfortunately, our bodies weren't meant to do that. So our bodies have started adapting and making things easier for us at the expense of human performance. The way that we then
yep,
go and try and perform in the gym to try and squat or to try and run, if our bodies haven't been prepared for that because of the last 6 months or last 30 years of not moving properly, then it's going to go downhill, right? So in
yep,
terms of long-term change, a physiotherapist or another, qualified professional will be able to help guide where that goes.
yeah,
Because I think in terms of long-term health, strength training or resistance training or just moving in general is so important.
yeah,
And we're seeing that education come through with, especially this, like the baby boomer generation and stuff. And
yep,
a lot of the older population. We all know that the aging populations are,
Yes.
a big problem for the health industry, but
Yep.
the people that experience a lot of problems themselves.
Yep.
And I think that education for them is getting better as well. That, once you turn 50, it doesn't mean you retire and stop moving or get to sit on your ass all day. You probably need to double down on your efforts and improve your movements and your exercise routine anyway.
I agree.
So, yeah, wrapping up what you said. Yeah.
No, we need to move more. We need to move more. There's definitely, I think I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I don't think it's off tangent at all. I think, we are like, we're starting to see things like where, we're getting standing desks and things like that. And I get that, but I definitely think that, movement is the key for a lot of pain. Like, I really believe in some of the big, let's say I see a lot of, the top influencers, but the accredited ones, right? The right ones. And they're saying movement is the key. And we've had clients ourselves start with pain, start moving now, and now they're pain free. So I think, if you're watching this at home and you're not moving much and you've got some pain, maybe you can start with, a quick visit to the GP. Obviously we want to tick some boxes, but start moving more, start getting off. Like when you're at work and you get breaks, make sure you get up and move around. Then we get home, right? And we sit down and we watch Netflix, and we sit and we eat, and when we don't stand, we don't walk, we don't move enough. So I think it's really important. And what I want to ask you then, as a sort of a general blanket statement though, is what sort of maybe 1 to 3 things would you like to see people do more of? Obviously movement is a general basis, but maybe even specifically exercises or particular movements or something like that PT should be giving their clients, but Gen Pop people should be doing as well. If you had to pick 3 sort of things that were really important, what would they be?
I think the first one would be the little 1%ers. So I think we often hear about these all the time is, mate, take the stairs instead of the escalator.
Yes.
Park that a little bit further away from work. If that means you got to walk an extra 50 meters, do the 1%ers, getting out and moving, walk the dog, whatever, moving in general, as you said, is the most key part of that.
Yep.
Just start to take the next step further in terms of specific exercise or maybe some general concepts in there.
Yes.
I think learning to move properly is the first step. So learning how to do all these big fundamental movements that we need to do in our everyday life, learning to squat to go and pick something down, or to deadlift something, right? To pick something off the ground, learning how to use your shoulders in terms of if we're reaching for certain things or, interacting with objects and stuff around us, because mate, everyone in our lives had to move a box or something for moving house or pick up your kids and stuff like that. There's a lot of these very everyday tasks are often what we hear from clients are saying, I can't pick up my child because my back hurts too much. Or I can't, I can't carry the groceries up the stairs because my knees hurt too much. And so it's more so learning how to use your body and learning how it functions and learning how to brace and activate and to move in certain situations that allows you to get those everyday things done without pain or without dysfunction for the rest of your life, right? We shouldn't see that decline as we get older too much.
Absolutely.
The third thing would be getting an understanding. It's not too specific, but an understanding of the way that the resistance training plays a part in maintaining bone mineral density, muscle size, muscle function, in terms of how it then relates into, cardiovascular health, your immune system, things like that as well. Just some basic ideas around how that works can be fundamentally amazing for how you improve your lifespan, right? So we know that your bone mineral density will only continue to improve until the age of about 30 to 35 for most people. After that age, your bones don't get any more dense. You're only looking to either maintain, if not, you're going to lose all that bone mineral density. So it's like, particularly in the aging population, people over the age of like 50 or 60, every time they fall over, they break a hip or they chip a bone, or that also expands into your muscle health as well. So your tissues like your tendons and ligaments, people in that older generation are obviously much more prone to, tendon injuries, ligament injuries and stuff like that as well. But it's because they haven't done enough or put enough work in the bank essentially in terms of their own body to lead up to that point. I've seen plenty of, 70 and 80-year-olds who are moving much better than 20-year-olds are these days. That's because they've spent so much time, not so much time, but spent some time investing in their own learning about how their body moves and how to adequately prepare it for long-term health. So learning how resistance training, even just body weight training can play such a beneficial role in long-term health. So just to summarize that for you, I think the 1%ers are the most important part, is taking the stairs instead of the escalator, or, parking a little bit further away, or, whatever that may be, that little 1% for you.
Love it.
The second part was, what was the second part? I forgot what it was.
Oh, mate.
I don't know. Oh, God.
Mate, learning to move.
Learning to move. Thank you.
I actively listen, which is why I'm the interviewer.
That's very true. I started on a tangent, I can go anywhere.
Yeah, learning to move better. You're talking about they need to learn the
definitely.
big movements.
Learning to move and learning how those can influence your day-to-day stuff and your everyday tasks. Doesn't mean you have to learn how to do a barbell Zercher squat or something like that. It just means that you need to learn how your body moves and how you can use that movement to improve, to function in daily life. The third part was adding some type of resistance training into your life and learning how that can be appropriate for you because of the health benefits it has all later on down the track. And Ben Bergeron, who's one of the most well-known, CrossFit coaches in the world, is really, really big on this, is learning how exercise should be able to sustain life. It's not about, you being able to sprint 100 meters as fast as you can now. It's about, okay, how well do you, firstly, your life, how well can you sustain your health and your well-being? How can you see your grandkids grow up and how can you still lift them? Things like that. So I think that's also a very big overarching theme for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, a lot of those concepts can be easily solved by also just hiring a really good personal trainer, a really good coach, or seeking advice from someone who actually knows what they're fucking talking about.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of those concepts and those realities, it kind of come through in a lot of the philosophies of coaching anyway. Yes. And I think that first step is just helping yourself. So
absolutely. Okay, I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I want to finish on something then that is for the general pop people watching this, and we're probably, we have a lot of females that, we particularly market to, we train to, they're in our scope, right? They're in our brand awareness. So what are your basic then recommendations around how often should someone train? Let's say just for general overall health and well-being and that longevity that we talked about. What are the basic recommendations that you would give to people each week?
Yeah, sweet. So in terms of a weekly exercise routine, doing a combination of resistance training and some cardio or conditioning training is going to give you a really well balanced approach to training. It's also going to give you a lot of really good health benefits as well. So resistance training, obviously musculoskeletal health. Your conditioning training, obviously looking at your respiratory function, your heart health and things like that as well is going to be very well rounded. For most people, 3 to 4 times a week will be a really good starting point. We see individuals who train up to 7 times a week or 8 times a week if they want to, but we also see people who train once or twice a week. And that's okay too. But 3 to 4 times a week seems like the kind of golden rule for the majority of people out there.
Right.
That's dedicated exercise time, right?
Yes.
Outside of that, putting in place some measures to help you increase your NEAT or your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or basically how much activity are you doing outside of your dedicated training time? So,
correct.
Are you walking a lot during the day? How many steps are you doing? And are you also considerations like your hydration and your diet and things like that come into play there as well? But I think increasing your NEAT, so how much work you're doing outside of the gym, is also incredibly beneficial for a lot of people. That's a really good golden rule to go by. And then thirdly, I think the diet is incredibly important as well. Now absolutely. You're probably more on top of that side of things than I am personally. I don't really touch the whole diet nutrition side of things myself. But having a well-rounded and balanced diet for whatever that looks like for you will be incredibly important as well.
Absolutely. And it's a combination of all that. And the thing I think that I want people to understand is that it doesn't have to be these hard efforts. Like I said, you don't have to do 200, 100 kilo Zercher squats. It's just, we need to move more. We do, but it is resistance training. I'm still a fan of cardio, and we put this as Reyne did and I do.
Cardio, but conditioning,
because there'll be coaches watching this, cardio, whatever. Good for the heart health. And then your diet, your sleep, your recovery, all of those things. It doesn't have to be super hardcore. You can just make 30 to 45 minutes a day for it, a couple times a week, and away you go.
Definitely.
So I think they're really great recommendations. Now, for anybody watching this that potentially wants to, I don't know, follow you a bit more, you have a YouTube channel. You putting content up on that regularly or not really?
I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, there's a YouTube channel. I found everything.
I don't know. Maybe there's an old personal. I don't know. No, look, a lot of my content now goes through Adapt. So we're very active on Instagram and Facebook are the main 2 platforms that we go on. So if you want to look at Adapt Nanda, so ADAPT, NUNDAH is the one to go for. My own personal stuff, I have my own personal Instagram account, but that's mainly just for clients and stuff like that too. So
we won't let them bug you on that one.
That's right.
Yeah, if you want to, go and have a look at the Adapt Nunda page, the content things out there. And obviously, as we said, start to do some research, like look at, go and research a bunch of different people. And eventually, as you start to dig deep, you can kind of figure out the ones that are the ones you should be listening to. And you can look at, the ones that obviously, and I know I don't want to go off track on this last little thing, but a lot of people read magazines and blogs and things like this. This is my take on it. If there's no referencing, right, and people are not referencing stuff, watch out. Because I did like an article the other day and it brought back my uni days. And I think I had 5 to 8 references in this period of for one reference for every sort of 250 to 300 words. And there's a lot of fitness influencers that are putting stuff out there. If they cannot reference their sources, ladies and gentlemen, that to me is a big red flag.
Definitely. I think it is very, very rare these days that you will find a coach or a trainer or whoever it is that has a very unique idea about the way that things should be done, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the time, or the majority of the time, is that a good coach will be able to say, hey, look, this is the avenue I think will be good for you, or this is the type of training I think will be right for you, because this expert who's done this, this, and this, and this has been employing this principle of training for this many years and stuff like that. So they have that responsibility to go, okay, well, this is where I've got my information from. This is how I think it's applicable for you. It's not solely based on my opinion is better than yours. Correct. That makes sense, right? So I think definitely, if you're doing your own research, you need to look at where, that person's opinion does come from. Is it their own opinion, or is it something that has been formed because of their research that they've done themselves? Have they collated the data and collated, all of these principles of exercise or training, whatever it is, and where have they got that from? Because I think that's definitely another important point to make.
Absolutely. I just thought I'd touch on that lastly because we got on it. So I thought I was going off on a tangent there, but I really wanted to put that out there. Dude, thank you so much for being our first guest on this show, and putting, you're giving up your time to be on here because he's a very busy man. So I do appreciate you jumping on here, mate. Thank you so much. And I think that's it, mate. Nothing else that you want to you got a last little say?
No, I think that's all from me, mate. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Hope we do this again sometime soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in and listening to this first podcast episode of, the Gen Pop Fitness Show. We've got obviously more guests coming and things like that. So stay tuned. If there's anyone particular or particular fields or something that you would like more information on to really see, reach out to us here, send us an email, comment down below if you're watching this on the YouTube or Facebook channel, and we will be able to get that data over to you. But thanks, guys. Thanks, Reyne.